It's that part of a sentence that you say to yourself, and here they are. For instance, I went to the store and bought some groceries. And then there's a bulleted list underneath it. But after the word groceries, you find a piece of punctuation. That's actually not the colon we're going to be talking about today, but you'll find it very interesting.
I'm never asking you again how you're going to introduce the colon.
Well, okay, Randy, can you tell us what we're really talking about?
Yeah, you know, we're doing cleansing for my first blog of the month, my first podcast of the month this year, and we've talked about the colon in several different areas, but we're going to actually talk about next week. There wasn't enough time to do both, so next we're going to talk about the cleansing of the colon in a lot more detail because it is so terribly important. But today I just titled this blog, "What Does the Colon Actually Do?" And, you know, colons, we've all got them. But many people have problems with their colons, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons for that. For the purposes of this particular podcast, I listed the colon as a part of the digestive system. Many of the body system books list it as a separate organ altogether, but it's really at the end of the digestive process. Think about it, if you've prepared a meal. You gather all the ingredients, you mix them and you cook them into a tasty dish, you serve them, you eat them, and then you clear the table and put the leftovers in the refrigerator, or you throw them in the trash. Well, you can use a parallel to that to say that the digestive system, we take in food, we add enzymes, bile salts, and acids in the stomach. We send them through the small intestine to extract what nutrients we can get, and then we place the leftovers in the colon. And so here, water and leftover nutrients are extracted and placed in the bloodstream, and then all the waste products are simply thrown away. Not unlike the whole food process is the digesting of that food process. Like I said, most of the body systems books put it as a part of the a separate system altogether because of all the things that it does. I want to talk about three major things that your colon does that people don't often pay attention to. Most of us just think it's a tube through which we get the waste products out of our body.
Right.
But there's some very important functions, important to your health, in fact, important to your livelihood, that take place in the colon.
And before you do that, can I ask?
Sure.
So where does the large intestine stop and the colon begin?
Those terms can be used interchangeably. The large intestine is the colon.
Okay, now I feel stupid.
No, that's not stupid at all. We use the terms interchangeably, but because we do, nobody tries to ever differentiate between the two. When we're talking body systems, we call it a colon. But if we also call it a bowel. So your bowel, your colon, your large intestine, that's all one body system or a part of the digestive system, and that's what we're discussing. It begins where the small intestine dumps into the large intestine with a little thing called an ileocecal valve. If you were to put your right thumb on your right hip bone and run your middle finger down toward your groin, that's the approximate location of the ileocecal valve. And then from there you have usually around a 5-foot tube that first goes up, we call that the ascending colon, goes across the middle of your body, we call that the transverse colon, then turns, makes another 90-degree turn and comes down, we call that the descending colon, and then another part that we call the sigmoid colon that makes that last little turn at the bottom of the abdomen and lines up with the rectum for waste disposal. Now, why in the if it's just waste disposal, why do we need to go up and across and down? Why didn't it just connect the small intestine directly to the rectum and be done with it?
Good question.
And that's the three reasons that we have the colon that I wanted to address next. Number one, the colon is used to extract nutrients. Now, we think of extracting the nutrients primarily in the small intestine, but invariably, the small intestine doesn't extract all of the nutrients out of the food that we eat, and we need every bit of the nutrient from our food that we can get.
Right.
And so, as the colon transverses as waste material transverses through the colon up, across, down, and out, then it actually takes the time to extract the last of the nutrients as well. And so nutrient extraction is extremely important for the colon. The second part is tied to that very, very well. That's water extraction. Most people have absolutely no idea how much water it takes to digest your food. You've got water that's taken in when you drink something while you eat. You've got water that's in the assimilated process in the stomach. You've got water you've got 40 feet of small intestine where the diverticuli, the little fiber elements that stick out from the small intestine colon wall, are extracting nutrients, and that's all flushed through there in a water-based substance. And so that water is there. If in fact we didn't have a water extraction process within the colon, then we would constantly have diarrhea, because every time we flushed out of the small intestine into the colon, we'd be flushing all that water. So not only would you have all the time diarrhea, every time you moved your bowel have diarrhea, but you would also be dehydrated all the time. Your body would get rid of so much water until you would be having to drink water all day in large quantities just to keep the body hydrated. So the colon is the primary organ that we have then that extracts that water. It's actually a 3 layers of a fibrous, almost rubber-like fiber that as the stuff is moving through, it causes contractions within the colon wall, and as it extracts, it's pulling out nutrients and water. Most of the nutrients that it pulls out are in fact included in that water, and so we're extracting the water so that we don't have diarrhea all the time, and we're getting the last bit of the nutrients as well. The bowel transit times, therefore, are very, very important, because if the transit time is too short, then you do in fact end up with diarrhea. If they're too long and too much water is extracted, then you end up with constipation. So you want it to be like Papa Bear, just right.
Just right.
Just right. That's exactly right. That's the second thing. And then the third thing that it does is actually moving the waste along. In this extraction process, if you don't have that fibrous movement within the bowel itself, those 3 layers that are constantly contracting and moving, I call it the toothpaste effect. You get toothpaste out of a tube by squeezing it. Well, the bowel has to be squeezed to move that stuff along.
So when the doctor puts that stethoscope on your stomach, sometimes he's listening for bowel sounds. That's a sort of, those things make sounds, and he can detect that that's happening.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That sounds that you and I don't normally hear. At least we don't want to hear them.
Yeah.
But yes, that's another thing that he's listening for too. Is, are things moving the way they should be moving? This is where I throw in, that's the 3 things it does. Extracting nutrients, water reclamation, and then moving the waste along.
Okay.
But this is where I throw in my little hint on exercise as well. Remember, the colon doesn't have a pump. I said toothpaste effect, and as the colon squeezes on the waste material, it moves it along to get it to evacuate out of the body. I think it's a little... there's an antithesis to the idea that we call it a bowel movement, because without movement, it doesn't move. And so I read an article about a year ago that says a sedentary lifestyle is the new cancer. We have more people in America dying today from a sedentary lifestyle than we have dying from cancer. Well, what do you mean by a sedentary lifestyle? I mean, you don't move. You retire, you go home, you sit down in front of the TV, and you don't move. Well, guess what? All of your body waste disposal systems, the lymphatic system and the colon, all require movement in order to do their function, to get rid of the waste material. I recommend, if you can do it, I've seen a change in many, many lifestyles in my business. If people will, after they get up from their meal, instead of going and sitting in front of the TV, are going at the office and sitting right back down at your desk, take about a 15-minute walk.
Is that all it takes? 15 minutes, huh?
About 15 minutes. It might take a little bit more than that for the waste to get completely out, usually
Okay.
about 45 minutes. We'll talk about that in the next blog. But the idea is that you're massaging the digestive system. You're getting stuff to flow through the small intestine. There's no pump there either. You're getting it into the bowel, and you're beginning to move it through the bowel. So take care of your colon, and it'll take care of you. But it requires constant care in order to be well taken care of.
And movement.
And movement.
All right. That's it on the colon today. Next week, we'll talk about care of the colon, which is incredibly important. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, we hope you stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.